Welcome to Radical Apologetics. I'm Josh. This is Pastor Chris Newton.
What's up, guys? How are y'all?
So basically, Radical Apologetics is just where we discuss what we believe, why we believe it, and what that looks like in our lives, how it plays out. So opening up, Pastor Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, man. I'm just a regular guy. Just a regular dude, man. Just a regular guy. You know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, you know, I'm a pastor, you know, but none of those things make me anything greater than anybody else.
Right.
You know, some days I'm a good husband. Some days I'm a great husband. Some days I'm a horrible husband, right? Some days I'm a good father, you know, and some days I'm a bad father. You know, it's difficult. You know, man, look, we mess up. We have, we fall, but guess what? We got grace that covers every one of those sins if we allow it. You know, the only difference between a Christian and a non-Christian is that, man, it's just a different way of getting up. You know, because we're all going to be knocked down.
Yeah.
Every one of us are going to be knocked down. But, man, so thankful you reached out to me. Man, we've been trying to do this for a while, and, man, I'm just so thankful you reached out to me. I've been excited about this.
Me too.
I've been excited about
I've been really excited.
And I've enjoyed chatting with you. Man, I love your heart.
Thank you.
I love your heart.
That.
I believe you're a sincere guy. And,
I appreciate that, man.
Man, I'm just, you know, looking forward to just seeing where this leads us, man. You know, God is good. And,
absolutely.
You know, just so thankful. Just so thankful.
So, why don't you tell us if somebody was to have you sum up your declaration of faith as far as what does Chris Newton believe? What would you tell them?
There's always a way back. Man, there is always a way back. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter where you are currently. You know, none of that matters. You know, that's far less important to God than what the plans that He has for you, right? And you know, a lot of times we think that, gosh, we're so powerful. We have all this ability. We have all of this, and we just see ourselves and we're like, oh man, I messed that up for good. You know, I can remember back in, so I started coming here to Lomax in 2016. And not long after that, Pastor Jeff told us he was going to plant another church, or told us he was resigning, and he didn't really know exactly what that looked like yet. And I can remember sitting in my kitchen immediately after he broke that information, and I'm like, Pastor Aaron's probably going to have a good chance of being the lead pastor, and that's going to let something open up here at Lomax. And at that time, I was going through Global University, Berean, to get my credentials with the Assembly of God. Not because I was looking for a church position or to change careers. I was with emergency management for 16 years. I loved it. I loved what I did with emergency management. I loved the folks I worked with. I still stay in touch with them. If they're watching this, hey, I love you guys. But there at the kitchen, I can remember a smile came across my face. I'm like, what if? But just as soon as that happened, you know, all of these things started flooding my mind. Chris, you can't do that. You can't do that because of this. You can't do that because of that. And man, God just makes ways. He just makes ways. And you know, I love these stories of redemption and reconciliation in the Word. And man, I've been caught up on Hosea lately. And man, Hosea is just such a beautiful story, and his love pursues us. Yeah. You know, his love pursues us regardless of the things that, you know, we may see happening in our lives, regardless of our deficiencies. You know, there was a quote on Facebook, and I'm careful sharing quotes on Facebook. You know, when he called me, he already had a plan to get around my stupidity. Right? Yeah. But you know, he knows that, and he always makes a way back. And those are some things that I think the church and I think we as Christians have to wrestle with at times, because we see a lot of people and unfortunately we see them as broken. Unfortunately, many times, and that's the way culture that's the way culture sees them. That's not the way church should see them. That's not the way brothers and sisters in Christ should see people. We should see people that they have potential, that God has a plan for them, that if they're still here on this earth, that God has a plan. Right. And so, you know, if you look at Hosea, I mean, and the relationship with Gomer, my goodness, God made a way. Hosea loved her. And you know, I loved after he buys her back, right? You know, after he buys her back, she goes and prostitutes and he buys her back. You know, he loved her, and it wasn't just a cold love. It wasn't a cold love. God didn't call him to love her with a cold love. He called him to love her with all his heart, and be totally devoted.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful story to me. And I love that. I love his level of love for his children when he ain't got to.
Yeah.
Hosea didn't have to love her. He didn't have to. But he loves us. He loves us just because who we are, because we're his children, kind of like I love my children.
Yeah.
But it's totally pure, and it's something that should get us out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. I heard a professor at Lee, his name was Dr. Debelat. He's awesome. His wife's awesome.
Yeah.
Kids are awesome. But he was talking about agape one time. And he used a phrase that just it's one of those that just got stamped in my head. But he said, it's a love of reckless abandonment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's trustful love, and so when you were talking about that love that Hosea had, it was that stupid love.
Yeah.
Love that doesn't add up in an equation. So identifying as a fellow Christian, right?
Yeah.
But our walks look a little different. What was it when you had your encounter with Jesus to adopt this faith? What was it that made you want to live it out like this?
Well,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
You said you went to Faulkner.
I went to Faulkner University.
But you're at a Pentecostal church. So how did it come from a prayer or whatever your experience was? How did it come from that to an ordained Assemblies of God pastor, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's just those daily moments of surrender. It's those daily moments, and I can remember just from the time that me and my wife were married. I tease my girls all the time that if they bring somebody home that was like me when me and my wife got married, it's a hard no. It's a hard no. I ain't doing it. There's no compromise there.
Yeah.
Because I was a rough dude. I was a rough dude. I lived in a manner that was just totally pleasing self.
Right.
I cared about no one other than myself. I had some habits that were very, very destructive. There were some things in my life that had no business being there, and I opened the door to that. I let them in. I let those things in my life, whether it's drinking or tobacco or the whole manner of things. I let those in.
Right.
And I was pursuing those. I was constantly pursuing those. Even when me and my wife started dating. In fact, I got the Bible right up there. You see it beside me, the picture of my dad and my brother. A month after we're dating, and I'm a hoodlum now. I'm a full-blown hoodlum. I'm not a heathen. I'm a heathen. I'm one of them.
Right.
So a month after we're dating, she gives me that Bible. I'm like, what? I got it. Thank you. That's not what I'm here for.
Right.
But after we were married we dated for 8 months, and then we were married, and just seeing her live her life. She didn't compromise. She didn't compromise anything. Seeing her live her life in the home as a Christian, as a devoted Christian, as a disciple, as a follower, as one who is allowing him to mold her and shape her. And it still inspires me to this day, brother. I love, my wife inspires me. She inspires me, and I
got
love
one
that.
of those.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Isn't it awesome that you wake up in the morning and look, I know where she is. I know exactly what she's going to be doing when she wakes up in the morning, and we do our devotions together and we see all that. And, it's just the power of somebody living life. And I wanted to be one of those people.
Yeah.
I wanted to be one of those people. But it started with daily surrender. And, I can remember, mid-July 2005, I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't pursuing it. It was just something that God did at that moment. He took tobacco from me like that. I remember there was an evangelist in town, and he prayed over me. And so I was radically delivered that moment. Now, there were some other things that hung around a little bit. Unfortunately, there were some other things that hung around. But it was just that walk. It was that progression of, just letting go of self a little more every day. And, I look at where I am today, and if I get discouraged about things, if I start going through trials, if I start having some, just some battles in my mind that we all have.
Yeah.
We all have those battles in
sure.
my mind. I like to look back 5 years. I like to look back 10 years.
Yeah.
And kind of see the progression. Lord, I may be struggling now, but I sure ain't what I was.
Right.
And it gives me hope that, tomorrow, I don't want to be the same tomorrow. Right? I don't want to be the same tomorrow. We look at, a lot of times, we look at Christians out there and man, they got it all together. And look, man, they just fighting the same battles you fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we're not ever called to plateau. I don't want to plateau. I don't want His presence in my life to plateau. Man, I just want more God. I just want more God. I just want, because I need that in order to be the father that I'm called to be.
Yeah.
Look, raising teenage girls ain't for the faint of heart, brother. I'll go ahead and tell you that. But I just want to be the dad. I want to be the husband that He's called me to be. I want to be the leader that He's called me to be. Because I believe that He's got something special for everybody. Now, that something special may be a hard road.
Yeah.
It ain't always easy. And
no,
in fact,
not at all.
We're not. I don't believe Christians are created for those mountaintop experiences. We're equipped on the mountaintop, but many times we live in that valley.
Yeah.
We live in that valley where it's messy. We live in that valley where it's tough. And man, if I could just give a message of hope to somebody in how I live my life.
Yeah.
And how I carry myself, how I'm a husband, how I parent my children. That makes it worth it.
I feel you.
Yeah, that makes it worth it.
I was talking with my wife and talking with the Romeros and different other people. And one of the things that I even talk with my pagan friends about, because it's interesting, there are similarities in the rules. They're just worded different.
Yeah.
But one of the things they always talk about, all my pagan friends, is that magic always has a cost, right? There's an exchange. Our Bible talks about Jesus as a refiner's fire. The closer you get, the more is burned away. There's a sacrifice, that takes place. And so I was thinking, in looking at them and looking at my Christian friends, and I was wondering how often we're trying to kill the same thing we've already killed.
Yeah.
And expect to get the same moment. Right? So like you were talking about surrender.
Absolutely.
And it's the same concept. What am I willing to let go away to get a little bit closer?
Yeah.
But I think in talking with the Romeros, like that doesn't happen in our spiritual path unless we've experienced that love. Because that, for me, it's a part of my story and my testimony that I struggled with addiction. And I was joking with him about service last Sunday, and I said, man, I was coming off the stage and I was like, we were right there. We were right there. And I sat down and I was like, God, did I get in the way?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And immediately, because I feel like God talks to us in ways that we can understand.
I agree.
And so immediately in my head, I heard, the first one's always free. They got a taste.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, because I struggled with addiction and everything, or maybe just because of how God made me, I live a life of extremes.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to find relief one way or the other.
And I think that's the majority of America, majority of humanity.
Right.
We're looking for that relief.
Right. But it's almost as if we have a culture where we're desperate for the relief, but we're not willing to kill anything. And so we end up in this weird compromise of our faith, where I take a little bit to numb it, but I don't give a little bit more to, you know what I mean? And we're in this weird, and as pastors, as spiritual leaders, as men in our homes, right?
Yeah.
We have to come to a place where we're like, listen, our 20-minute devotion isn't working. You know, you don't hear people say words like Terry anymore in church.
I love the Terry, man.
You know what I mean? Like,
I love it, yeah.
And even with my pagan friends, because in my pursuit for something real, I've seen some crazy stuff that I just can't explain. But even with them, I'm like, I don't see that with y'all.
Yeah.
So nobody, it feels like nobody's willing to just be like, okay, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, how I can give them that taste. Because for me, that suspension that happens when you're in that Shekinah glory of God.
Yeah, just that peace.
There is nothing. It's like an isolation tank with your dad, your grandpa, and your mom all hugging you at the same time.
It's beautiful.
You know?
So beautiful.
And I would give anything for that moment.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of the podcast is about is there anybody else who would give anything? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm with you. You know, and just as you're talking about that, I'm reminded what Jesus said on the cross. So he said, "It is finished."
Yeah.
Right. He said it's done. It's finished. The work is done.
Yeah.
The work is complete. And I think what keeps a lot of people from experiencing that, they don't give themselves the liberty to enter into enter into His presence because they feel like they don't deserve it. They haven't earned it because that Jesus fulfilled the law, right? He fulfilled every bit of it. That yoke that we weren't able to carry, He said, "I'm going to take that on and I'm going to give you mine. I'm going to give you my yoke.
Right.
My yoke is light," right? And so understanding that the work is done, all we have to do is enter into His presence. And I think that's important. And just like what you're talking about, we're not going to do that unless we realize what that sacrifice was, what His love truly means to us. And the exchange, man, I love the concept of exchange, man. That problem I have, that difficult thing, that's whether that's sickness, that addiction, that thing that I've carried shame for all my life, that disqualification that we've all carried at one point in time, man, we want to hold on to that because we think somehow we can fix it. You know, I can't fix that. If I could fix that shame in my life, I'd have done it a long time ago, right?
And that's the weird tension.
You gotta leave it.
Of
you
thinking I can fix it and knowing I can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just like cruise right in the middle.
and you know, and we act like we all right.
Right.
I was so growing up, I was raised on country music. And I'm not talking about the music we hear now. I'm talking about Hank. I'm talking about Waylon. I'm talking about Conway. I'm talking about George Jones, and Conway Twitty's song. You know, "Hello, Darling." He says, "I'm doing all right, except I can't sleep and I cry all night to dawn." Right? That's the way the majority of us are these days. Oh, we're all right. We're all right, except I can't sleep and I cry all night to dawn. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm happy. When our spirituality is in the dumps, you know, we're morally bankrupt. Our morality is just crazy. But we try to put on this face like we're all right because we're still trying to hold on to that thing. We're still trying to hold on to that thing that is putting so much shame, so much condemnation, and it allows us, when we're carrying that, it hinders us from hearing from God, and we start hearing more from Satan than we hear from God. We start hearing the disqualifications. We start hearing that you can't do it, that you're broken, that you're in a state of disrepair. You'll never be what God called you to be, because guess what? You messed it all up. But if we take that and we exchange that, if we truly leave that at the altar and accept that gift of Jesus Christ, amazing things can happen. The whole countenance of people changes. When they truly feel that love and they're able to exchange that thing they had for that promise that He has for us, man, people's countenance change. And no wonder it changes, because they're no longer carrying that heavy burden.
Right.
You know, and you know, I love the fact that he takes that from us if we give it to Him. You know, and that's the powerful part of the gospel.
And I think part of the lost in translation of it is that we've altered it to be a gospel of servitude instead of a gospel of submission.
Yeah.
Be-
Yeah.
Because if service is required of me, I'm always unqualified. I'm always less than. I'm always miserable. But if submission is required of me, it's all on you.
Yeah.
I just
that's
do
right.
what I'm told.
The
You see
pressure's
what I mean?
off.
Exactly.
The pressure is off of me.
Exactly.
You know, and he's just saying, if you want me to handle it, I'll handle it. If you want me to do it, I'll do it.
Right,
you
and
know?
that's why it says obedience is better than sacrifice.
Absolutely, and I love that. I love that you bringing up servants or submission. That's almost kind of like servanthood versus sonhood.
Exactly.
Right, and I'm reminded of the story of the prodigal son, where he just wanted to be a servant, but his father had so much more for him at that moment. It was more than anything he could expect. And I love that fact of it. I mean, it's, you know, we start thinking, when we start thinking like servants, again, that we're just here for servanthood.
Right.
We start thinking like, again, we've got to do stuff to enter into His good graces. I've got to put myself, or God indebted to myself.
Right.
You know, I've got to do something to conjure Him up. I've got to do something in order to experience Him. Well, that's not the way it is at all. It's the submission, just like you said, it's that submission that we're called to enter into, and man, that's a beautiful thing.
So why do you think? Because I do it in my life. I'm in the process of trying to unpack it all and tear it down.
Yeah.
We all are. But why do you think that we put so many things in the way of knowing Jesus? Like, for instance, our immediate go-tos, especially in the South, are like drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, and premarital sex.
Absolutely.
Right? But even in the way we do churches, because like the church I go to does it a little different than you guys. The Baptist church does it a little different. The Nazarene church does it a little. Everybody has a slightly different flow. But we all put steps that people have to go through, or even steps for ourselves, before it's just Jesus.
Yeah. I think it's a couple of different things. You know, I think one, it's trying to figure out, how do I clean myself up before I come to a holy God?
Yeah.
You know, I think people have a concept of God that they have to be clean before they get to His presence, and I'm down with that. Look, I don't want to come to Him stepping the wrong way.
Yeah.
I revere God. He is an awesome, you know, just His power is awesome. And so I want to come to Him the right way. But that way is through humility and faith and putting yourself last. You know, I love with Isaiah, you know, Isaiah 6, you see him in the throne room of God. You see him there, and who will go? Lord, I'll go. And it was after he accepted what God had for him that he was cleansed.
Yeah.
Right? He was cleansed. He was made, he was consecrated, he was made in a way that was just, that God equipped him. You know, so I think part of what keeps people from coming to God is, gosh, they don't feel like they deserve it. You know, they see, or they've experienced hurt. You know, look, we've all had church hurt.
Yeah.
You know, we've all been hurt by churches. And, you know, unfortunately, when we're hurt by churches, we start pointing the finger at God instead of pointing the finger at man. You know?
Well, and I feel like that's because if we point things at God, it takes away accountability on us.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Because like part of me for my recovery was looking at what my part was. You know what I mean? And even James says, confess your sins one to another, that therein you might find healing.
Yeah.
So the healing didn't come from confessing your sins to God. Forgiveness did.
Yeah, forgiveness did.
Healing came from going back to your brother or sister.
Matt, do you think we'd be at so much more unity if we did that? You know, if we took the opportunity to not go to social media, to not go to whatever, if we just sat down and said, look, man, here's what I did. I realized that I need some forgiveness. I realized that I wronged you. I realized that there was some things that I did that weren't right. And I ask you to forgive me. Do you think this world would be totally different? I do.
Completely.
I do. And I think we would, when we have those moments of humility like that, we start to change our mindset concerning people. And then all of a sudden, we're not looking at that person to what they're trying to get. We're looking at that person and say, if something happens, I'm going to start assuming the best.
Yeah.
Instead of assuming the worst. And man, that can be so, that could change our culture. That could change our culture.
But I feel like that was it my wife it was either my wife or Pastor Wayne Hughes was talking about you can't give a love you haven't received.
Yes.
Right? So if I've never experienced unmerited forgiveness, there's no way I could expect it from a person. And so there's all these disqualifiers, all these things that keep Jesus out.
Yeah.
And we were talking yesterday, me and my wife, or the day before, but we were talking about Job. My favorite scripture in the whole entirety of the Old Testament is in Job. I believe it's chapter 33.
Okay.
Right? So Job has been whining and complaining. God hasn't said a word.
Yeah.
Right? Then shortly after, Job gives false attributes to God. You know, we sing the song in the bridge. He gives and takes away, but
Whew, Lord, that's man.
But Job finally gives this false character trait to God and says, well, he gives and takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord. And then right after that it says, and a whirlwind surrounded Job, and a voice like thunder came down from heaven. And I like one translation says that God said, sit down and address me like a man, because I have questions and I demand answers. And he starts questioning if Job actually knows who he's talking about.
Yeah.
You know, where were you when I
created this world?
And then finally, Job comes to this place that I feel like for our faith tradition, the church needs to come to. I heard rumors of you.
Yeah.
But I spoke words without knowledge.
Yeah.
Because we see that when there's an encounter with God, a real, genuine encounter.
Absolutely.
Jacob walked different.
He did.
Moses talked different. Enoch vanished.
Yeah. Where's he now?
Elijah pieced out. Right, but we've come to this place where our faith has become a vaccine. Where we give folks just enough that it doesn't mess up how we do things.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like how we do things as far as Lomax. I mean like from our 9 to 5.
Oh, yeah.
From like how we interact as a community of faith.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. And, you know, I think when you start losing your priorities as far as what God did for you, He's not only changing the now, He's changing the forever. Right? You have the opportunity to live in a manner that's forever. We don't understand that. And unfortunately, we think we're here permanently. Right? We think we're here permanently when truly it's just visiting hours. You know, you look at Hebrews, and they saw, even the ones who didn't receive it yet, they saw it from afar off. He talks about, he said, well, they saw it from afar off. And I think that's something that we need to make sure that we're paying more attention to, is that this is not the world we're living for. This is not the one. This is not the life we're living for.
Right.
Yeah, but we're in the here and now. We are in the here and now. I'm flesh. You pinch me and it hurts. Right? When we experience things in this world, it hurts. I got you. I got that. But this isn't the end game. You know, and I think when we start focusing on what the end game is, that place that Jesus went to prepare for us, that we may be there also, I think it becomes a little, I'm not going to say easier. It's not easy to be a disciple. I don't care at all. It's not easy to be a disciple because there's pruning there, because there's conflict there, because it's just ask Peter. You know, there's a lot of things that are there. But I think if we can truly focus on that and understand this is just a vapor, this is just visiting hours, this is not something that's permanent, all of a sudden, those moments in which we're pruned, in which He's discipling us, it becomes a little easier because we can see the goal.
Yeah.
You know, and when He, look, I wish He'd let me know the plan for my life. Look, I do.
You and me
But
both.
let me tell you, if I'd have known the plan for my life 15 years ago, that this is where I'd be right now, oh, I'd be scared to death because I wasn't prepared for that.
Same.
What I was prepared to do, I was prepared to submit that and surrender that little bit every day. And then as that step came closer and closer and closer, man, I had been doing things. You know, I had been doing things in private, and God, you know, He blessed that, and He saw that. And, you know, there were trials that me and my wife, we walked through that nobody else knew about.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was through those moments that He cultivated such trust, and we saw that, again, that stuff at that altar, that we could truly leave that there.
Yeah.
And that He was going to do with it, handle that in a noble manner, handle that in a trustworthy manner.
Yeah.
You know, because there's sensitive things we need to leave there.
Yeah.
That's difficult. There's sensitive things that look, I hadn't opened up to anybody about other than my wife.
Yeah.
That I need to leave there, and am I going to trust Him with it? And
Yeah.
so I think when we start having that trust, that love, you know, you kind of started out by, you know, I can't give something that I don't have.
Right.
Then you can move forward in what that discipleship is from Him. But guess what? You're also leading others as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that's important.
It is.
That's important.
It is.
I'm not here for me. You know,
Right.
if I'm here for me, then Lord, how selfish is that? How selfish is that? No, let me lead my family. Let me lead my brothers and my sisters in Christ. Let me lead those that I run into in the community that's just looking for a little bit of hope. You know, because hope is awesome. Hope is that thing that gets you up in the morning that tomorrow may be different.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's important.
I think it's cool. I was doing a study of Moses' encounters with God.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the commentaries I read when Moses asked, "Who do I say sent me?"
Mm-hmm.
One of the translations was, "Tell him I am now."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So His manifestation only existed in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to call on me. You don't have to. I'm here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so when we stay in that, give us this day our daily bread, when we stay in this moment of grace, right, you have this really cool faith exchange that happens where every day you're given these nudges and these pushes to make a choice. And you take the little bit of faith you have and you go all in.
Yeah.
And then you get a return. And then the next one's a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But that's where it says, you know, it's instilled into every man the same measure of faith. Just, are you gonna all in with it?
Yeah. Am I gonna go hide it in the ground? And,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
And that's, many times we think we're protecting it like
Yeah.
that because he expects something, right? And so we're just gonna go bury that or put it in a safe place and give it back to Him later. But that's not what good stewardship is. You know, He expects us to be a good steward. And, you know, I think there's different levels of stewardship that we have. You know, I'm not going to be accountable for what you have.
Right.
I'm not going to be accountable for that.
Right.
For that portion, that talent, whatever it is, you're going to be accountable for that.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to be accountable for what He has given me.
Yeah.
And to manage that and to use that to not bring glory to myself, but point others to Him. And, you know, when we can start looking at stewardship, we start handling our business a little differently.
Yeah.
We start being a little more intentional, you know, because what I have isn't mine. It's something that He's given me. And I need to bring it back to Him in good condition, plus some.
Right.
And I want to do that. And so we start walking a little more intentional.
I like what Dr. Shane Claiborne said. He said, you're either Peter's mother-in-law, or Judas.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, you're Judas trying to get it to submit to your own system. You're Peter, you gave it all away and just followed with abandonment. Or you're his mother-in-law, you made it all available.
Yeah.
Because there's stories of her hosting all the apostles.
That's right.
And everything she had was available for the use of the kingdom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What questions do you have for me?
Man. So you run into somebody
Yeah.
needs a little hope.
Yeah.
What you go to? What you go to? Somebody that needs hope. Somebody that's at a point where, man, I don't know if I can make it through tomorrow. And what's that thing that if you don't have, that you feel like you're farther from God? You know,
Yeah.
and that's maybe two questions.
Yeah,
but what's that spiritual discipline that you do that, man, this is what brings me close to God. This is what brings me in His presence.
So I'll answer the second one first.
Okay.
For me, I have built an altar in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Not figuratively, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And I use incense, and it is a set apart place. Like, things do not get stored on that. Like, it's not a catch-all.
Okay.
And I sit there every single morning.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about setting an atmosphere where I don't believe that you light incense and the Spirit shows up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not my thing.
Right. Okay.
Right. But I do believe, even in the tabernacle, they would kneel before the table of incense before they went to the Holy of Holies.
It was there.
Right, because a familiar smell that you always associated with that is very powerful in allowing you to be somewhere for a singleness of purpose. So you create this familiar atmosphere that when I smell this, when I hear this, I'm pursuing one thing. And when I set that time apart, that's when I feel connected.
Yeah.
That's when I feel inspiration. That's when I like the Native American proverb that says you're either the leaf or the rock, but either way, the river takes you.
That's right.
Those moments allow me to be a leaf where I'm sensitive to where the Spirit wants to guide me for my day. And generally, I end up in really weird scenarios.
And so that sets it up just like worship music. You know, that's
exactly.
And there was incense. Yeah, they used incense, and in fact, if you look at, gosh, I forget the scriptural reference there, but there was a plague overtaking the people, and the only thing that stopped that plague was Moses getting out, or I'm sorry, it was the priest getting out between the plague and the people with the incense. And yeah, I forget the scriptural reference. So somebody will probably comment on that. But yeah, that's so you set the environment. Set the atmosphere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I end up in situations where, you know, I think I said it in the video with my wife, but 3 things I have to do to remain connected to God and sober. I have to practice rigorous authenticity. Right?
Yeah.
I have to do the uncomfortable work. And I have to surrender the outcome.
Yeah.
If I do those 3 things, I stay on the right path.
Yeah.
So I take my dog down to the dog park in Prattville. And I normally like the fancy one over in Alabaster, but I wanted to be by myself.
Yeah.
You know? And my dog's just running, not a soul there, huge open space. All of a sudden, this guy pulls up in his big truck. He has like Cummins on the top. And for me, I immediately have a little bit of anxiety, you know?
Yeah.
They aren't generally the kindest people when they see me, you know?
Okay.
And
I hate that, man.
Well, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, nobody forced me to get piercings and tattoos.
Yeah.
It was a choice,
Yeah.
you know? But this guy gets out of his truck and he has this beautiful, I think it was one of the Great Pyrenees, big white dog. And it's just running with my dog along the side on the fence.
Yeah.
And the guy's just leaning on it. And so I walked up there and I said, "Hey, how's it going, man? That's a beautiful dog." First thing he says, "You ain't from around here, are you?" You know? And I said, "Actually, no." And he goes, "Well, why in the world are you here?" Now, I have a choice, right? I can say, well, I married a girl from down here. That's the truth. That's not rigorous authenticity.
Yeah.
rigorous authenticity says, well, I came down here because I was a heroin addict and I went to Turning Point.
Yeah.
And I got treatment. Then they ended up hiring me. I met my wife.
Yeah.
And now I'm here.
Yeah.
And so that's what I told this stranger. And all of a
That's
sudden,
a lot of info in the first 20 seconds of knowing somebody.
it's true.
Yeah.
Right? And most people, that's where they put a block for Jesus. Right? It's things we put in the way of people encountering Jesus. Well, ego and pride is number one.
That's right.
Right? And so I just told him, I was like, honestly, man, I was a heroin addict, came down here for treatment, got hired, met my wife, and life's gnarly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this dude starts tearing up. And he looks at me and he goes, I lost my son 3 weeks ago to an overdose.
Yeah. That's powerful.
See, people are always asking you for hope.
Yeah.
Are you always sharing it?
Yeah, for real.
You see what I mean? Like, it's the same as me and my wife going for a date night, right? And we're sitting at the booth and this young waitress comes up and she's like, hey, how are y'all? And we say, well, it's been a bit of a rough week.
Yeah.
But, we're hanging in there trying to reset our minds. How are you doing? See, authenticity requires authenticity.
Yeah.
Because authenticity will either make people uncomfortable and they'll leave, or they have to match you.
Yeah.
That's the only way to stay engaged. And it's her job to stay engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she goes, I am just having an awful day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, my wife, being the great Chilton County girl she is, what's going on with you, baby?
Yeah. Yeah.
People are always asking for hope. But are we sitting in a place where we're sensitive to the Spirit, that we live a life of sacrifice? There's a lady, Mel Robbins. She does like motivational stuff.
Okay.
Language warning. Okay. But she talks about the 3-second rule. She says all of us have impulses. And they're meant to guide us, but we have 3 seconds to act on them. If you don't act within those 3 seconds, you build up a callus on the muscle that allows you to react. So like, no, we don't know what the Spirit's doing. We don't look like Jesus because we aren't his hands and feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not a like, I make bad choices every day. I don't have it down, but like, this is how I'm trying.
Yeah.
And
I think, goodness, the church could use, and when I say the church, I'm talking about the universal body of believers there. Man, we could use just some more authenticity in our life and extending that to those who, God puts in our path. Whether it's that person who doesn't look like you, doesn't talk like you. I tell you, we had a church that was sharing our facility not too long ago. Back in 2016, 2017, Hispanic church had a car run through their sanctuary. And so they were kind of meeting at different places, didn't really have a place to meet.
Wow.
And so we opened up a location here at Lomax for them, specifically for them.
Yeah.
Didn't require anything of them. Just, hey man, look, this is a place for you guys to worship.
Right.
And it was through that, and I didn't really know a whole lot about Hispanic culture. I didn't really know a lot. I hadn't really spent a whole lot of time around any Hispanic people. But man, the beauty and the awesomeness of just kind of opening my heart up to them. God opened it up, and I've got great friendships with them now. I feel a burden for them now, and it's an amazing thing. And it was just because we had an opportunity to spend some time around somebody else that didn't look like us, that didn't talk like us, and there was even some communication differences there, but it was amazing. It was amazing, and that's forever changed the way I think about some things. Not to get political on here, but the way that I think about how some of the Hispanic community has been treated.
Yeah.
And all those things. And I think we take the same example with, with race. Look, man, I want our church to be so diverse. It's the heart of us to have such a diverse church, because that's what heaven's going to look like.
Yeah.
It's my heart that we see those who are confused in their sexuality, to be brought to Christ and let Christ do what Christ does with people, right? And that's my prayer, is that He just totally, that sometimes we're made a little bit uncomfortable, that the church is made uncomfortable, and that we just are able to experience different cultures and different beliefs, and that doesn't affect, just because somebody comes in here that may worship a little differently, that doesn't affect my relationship with God. He's working out His salvation with fear and trembling. I'm called to work out my salvation with fear and trembling. Now, there's some standards to that salvation, but that's what I'm called to do. And let me just be so genuine and authentic to those as well.
Right.
And man, that's a great principle, brother. That's a great principle.
Thank you.
Great principle.
I can't take credit for it, but
yeah. Well, no. There ain't nothing new created under the sun.
But it's like, honestly, if we got back to the Sermon on the Mount,
mm-hmm.
the Book of James, and the Beatitudes,
mm-hmm.
there's your model of Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
But dude, I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Man, I've enjoyed it.
I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Like I said, whenever I was talking with Justin, you're probably not going to have an incense altar at your house. And I'm probably not going to have a Pentecostal church.
There you go.
But I appreciate your walk, and I appreciate
Amen.
you sitting down here with
Amen.
me, man. For
Thank
real.
you. I've grown with it as well, brother. God bless you, my friend.